But so use the Q&A feature to submit questions. Again, we'll be here about 60 minutes. Feel free to say hi in the chat. Just be kind and respectful to each other, of course. Um, I will send out the resources from this workshop. So the slide deck that I'll go through and the recording of the workshop, I will send that out tomorrow morning. So, you don't have to worry about taking notes. There's one thing I do want to share with you that might be useful while you're following along. And I created a digital worksheet called Returning to Present Map. And if you want to use this QR code or go to the link where it says bit.ly/return map, if you want to just type that into your browser, that will get you the Google Doc, and then you can download it, go to file and then download it and save your own copy. And then you can fill it out while I'm doing this if you want. Um, there's no requirement whatsoever, please. But if it's going to make it a little bit easier for you to be able to kind of create a return to present map, then I thought it might be a good idea. It might be helpful. I've started doing similar kinds of things in other workshops, and I'm finding that people appreciate it. So I'm going to try it again. Okay, so you've got that. We've got a good amount of people here. It is 7:07. So why don't we just get started? And again, if you raise your hand or do anything in the chat, I won't be able to see it. Like Donna just raised her hand. I won't be able to follow that. But if you have a question, just put that in the Q&A. Again, if you don't see the Q&A on your Zoom toolbar, it'll be in the more section. Okay, so today, we're talking about emotional time travel, triggers, anchors, and staying present. I'm going to help you understand how triggers transport us to the past and how to find your way back to the present moment. What we'll do tonight is we'll talk about how emotional time travel works. We'll talk about that the way we respond to triggers is actually a form of protection. As I like to say, it's a feature, not a bug, even if it feels like a bug. Recognizing your patterns, so learning about what your port keys are, and I'll get to that. I'm going to teach you a whole slew of grounding tools or give you a bunch of ideas that you can use for grounding tools to anchor yourself back to the present. And then I'm going to talk about self-compassion because every good workshop includes information on self-compassion. That's how important it is. Let me tell you a little bit about myself in case you don't know me already. So, I'm Jeremy Schneider. I am a social worker, I'm a family therapist, and I'm a certified life coach. I'm the author of Fatherhood in 40-Minute Snapshots, which is a parenting book that I wrote, and my memoir In My Rearview Mirror is coming out next year, which I am, as my daughter would say, nearsighted about, which is both nervous and excited. I do all kinds of workshops. If this is your first one, I do workshops on self-care. I do workshops on self-compassion. I do workshops on uh, dealing and managing with our parts as kind of internal family systems. I do a lot of overcoming trauma work, like what we're going to be doing here. And I also do workshops on AI and mental health. And in fact, I have a Psychology Today column on AI and mental health. And so when I send you this email tomorrow, I'll include links to some of the stuff that you might be interested. Again, you can take a look or not take a look. That's totally fine. I also do an enormous amount of writing, and I have put together a number of free guides that I call your mental health starter pack. And so what you can do is go scan the QR code or go to this link, but I'll also tell you a little bit more about these free guides towards the end. So if you want to wait, that's totally fine. And again, they're free. So let's start with the basics. What are emotional triggers? So, according to the Cleveland Clinic, emotional triggers are environmental, interpersonal, sensory, or cognitive situations that ignite sudden, intense negative reactions. All that to say is it can be pretty much anything that makes us believe, feel, think, remember what it was like when we were going through a difficult time in our lives. That's what a trigger is. What triggers me can be very different than what triggers you or triggers somebody else. And the reality is that we could even have the same experiences and have very different reactions from it. There's such lack of clarity as to exactly why these things happen and why some of us get stuck with them more than others. But the truth is that it's a real chemical reaction that happens in our brains and our bodies. And it's not something we necessarily really have a lot of control over. So I want to talk about some of these. So environmental, right? So for instance, if you're in a familiar place where you had been hurt before, that's going to be very difficult. Or you're doing similar activities or events, right? That's going to be challenging. If there's specific interpersonal interactions or the way that someone criticizes you or a tone of voice that they use, right? That may be very triggering for you. I'm sure you have had food or smelled something that made you feel like you were a child again, right? That's a trigger. It's just not the way we think of a trigger, right? But that's a trigger. And so that's kind of what it's like, except oftentimes it puts us into a place that was really bad for us, not one that necessarily felt good. Like when you listen to a song and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm 11 again. That was such a good song. Triggers as the way we think about them, right, are more of the kinds of things that are like, oh, that makes me feel like I'm 11 again. That's a horrible feeling, you know? And then cognitive, either this is just the things that we're thinking, it's recurring memories, things of that nature that just come back and elicit a strong reaction. So I thought it would be good to take a little moment to talk about what is trauma. Trauma is a big word and it means so many different things to so many different people. So, as defined by the American Psychological Association, it's an emotional response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event, which is probably what you thought it was. But what's key is it's not just about the event itself, it's the impact it has on us. That's the real trauma part of it. And it's important to understand that trauma exists on a continuum and it ranges from a variety of things. And so let's take one moment and really kind of talk about that. The way I think about the trauma spectrum, I think about it as big T, little t, and T. And so big T trauma, that's the major life altering events, abuse, violence, catastrophic loss, right? I think these are the ones that we're most familiar with when it comes to the word trauma. Small T trauma is the way that I think about small T trauma is these things that if you said it happened once in your life, it may not be that big of a deal. But if it happens repeatedly over years, then it becomes an enormous deal. And just think about it this way in terms of like if you one of your parents was spoke to you in a condescending manner, if they did that once, it'd be like, oh, that kind of sucked. But it wouldn't be that big of a deal. If that was the primary way that they dealt with you, that's going to have a lasting impact on you. And so that's kind of the way that I think about it. So even if it seems like it was a small thing, that small thing happening repeatedly over and over and over again really causes us trauma. And then there's things like adversity, which are particularly the things in our environment that we have no control over. And maybe that's poverty, maybe that's racism and discrimination, maybe it's health issues, chronic stress. The way that those impact us and our families can have a pretty powerful impact on us. But it's important to remember that every child has a quote unquote normal child development path, right? There is a common child development process that we all go through. What trauma does is it knocks us off that. And that's where it starts to cause problems for us. And that's where you can see the earlier the trauma occurs, the more lasting impact that it can have because it's earlier in our child development process that it gets thrown out of whack. I think it's important to also be honest and acknowledge that if you've been through a difficult experience, that doesn't it doesn't mean you're a victim or anything like that, but it means that you've been impacted and that you may need to do some work to reduce that impact on you. What does that healing process look like? So I want to be completely honest with you. Healing isn't about never getting triggered. I have done enormous work on myself as well as with other people, obviously, but enormous work on myself. And it isn't about never getting triggered, but it is about being able to handle situations where you might get triggered. It's about being able to handle what happens when you are triggered. And it's a matter of being able to respond in the way that you want to respond instead of reacting the way we have in the past. And that's the key. Once you get to the point of being able to respond, we start talking about a sense of freedom, a sense of choice, and that's a game changer. And we'll talk more about this for sure. So the emotional time travel part of this is comes from this the Harry Potter port key metaphor. So if you've read Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, there's the Quidditch World Cup, and they find objects. I think in that one there primarily is a boot that they all grab onto, and it instantly transports them to another place. Excuse me. So wherever they were, they grab onto this magical object. It transports them to where the World Cup was. Emotional port keys are these experiences that we have, these sensations, etc., right, that we have, and they instantly transport us. It's just that they don't transport us to another place. They transport us to another time, particularly a time when we were much younger. And think about this, and I'll probably say this again, but if you're an adult trying to deal with an adult situation, that can be challenging, right? Even being an adult is hard. But if you're in elementary school, if you feel like you're in elementary school and you're trying to deal with an adult situation, that can seem impossible. And that's always a good sign that you're not feeling like an adult, that you've been triggered and time traveled back to your past. I want you to be able to understand a little bit of the mechanics, the brain actions that happen when we're triggered. So, when we're triggered, our body reacts as if an old moment of pain or danger is happening right now. That's why it's so hard to deal with. It's not a memory of, oh, this is what happened to me back then. It is, oh my God, this is happening again right now. Our nervous system is designed for survival. So it built these protective responses. And that's part of what transporting us emotionally to the past is. This is not a failure of yours. This is not a fault that you have. It is the way your brain is meant to function. It's actually intentionally doing this to protect you. It sucks. Like it absolutely sucks, but it's not your fault. It's not your failure. It's not weakness. It's how we're built. So I want to get into this a little bit more, and I hope this won't get too technical for you, but I do think it's important that you understand I'm not just saying this. This is actually brain chemistry and the brain makeup that we're of how it works. So our amygdala, which is the kind of if you can see on this one, right? This is around where the amygdala is. It's just above the brain stem. And it's where everything that we experience, all our sensory information coming from all of our different nerves, they come through the brainstem to the amygdala. If the amygdala notices that something is wrong, it doesn't distinguish between past and present. The amygdala is so primal, it can't tell time. It only knows safe, danger. So safe, danger. That's basically kind of what it is, right? It's either you either are safe or you're in danger. And if you're in danger, then all of these things happen, right? So they call this the bottom up approach to trauma because essentially everything that you experience, and I don't know if you can see my screen or not. Let's try this, right? Everything comes through this way and it goes through your amygdala. But up here is where your neocortex, your prefrontal cortex, that's like the logical part of your brain. Before it even gets to the logical part of your brain, your amygdala has already said, oh my goodness, this is danger. So let's just use an example. If I had to talk to a boss, that was always kind of a stressful thing for me, right? That would come up like my boss would say, come to my office, right? So I would go to their office. And as soon as that would happen, that would come into my brainstem, up to my amygdala. And before anything else happened, my amygdala was like, we're in danger. This is like just like every other time that we've been called by an authority figure, we're in danger. We need to get ready to run, right? Fight or flight. That's what happens. The fight, flight, freeze or fawn, that whole idea, right? That comes from the amygdala. So when you get frustrated that you're not thinking clearly, it's because it doesn't even get to your prefrontal cortex. Again, this is the way the brain was meant to function. This is not a flaw that you have that you're just not able to think clearly. Your amygdala says, "Oh, this is a dangerous situation. We have to respond in that as if we're in a position of danger." And so this is what your adrenaline gets released, right? Other chemicals get released, right? Your body gets ready for fight or flight action, even though I'm just gonna go see my boss, you know? Let me try and get rid of this. Okay. Oh, that's gonna be annoying. Hold on one second. Okay. So again, this is how trauma and emotional memory keep us stuck in old loops. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The challenge is it's protecting you from something that's already happened. It's learned when we were in that situation back then, we needed to be activated like this. And so now, when it sees any situation that feels remotely similar or familiar, it activates into fight or flight mode. And it happens again before you have a chance to even think about it. That's why it feels so out of control because your amygdala is part of your sympathetic nervous system, which is part of the um, non-voluntary aspects of your brain and nervous system, right? That's where your heart beats. That's where breathing happens, right? We'll get to some of this, but this is not something you have control over. What you do have control over is building that sense of awareness and then figuring out what to do when this happens. As I mentioned earlier, feeling like a child in an adult situation is terrifying, right? Triggers activate old roles and emotional scripts. They're not mistakes, they're not character flaws. This is a feature, not a bug. And the tech world where I spent some time a while ago, there's a saying that brings me joy thinking about. It's figuring out whether something that happens in an application is either a feature or a bug. So this our fight or flight reaction to things that don't feel like they're that dangerous is actually a feature. It's meant to save us. We've learned that over thousands of years as humans. It feels like a bug, right? It feels like something's wrong, that this wasn't written properly, but it's not. It's a feature and it helped save us when we needed it. It's just that it's still trying to save us from something that happened oh so long ago. So I talked a little bit about scripts. I want to explain that to you. And so the one of the interesting things about this workshop, and I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, but it I'm taking bits from a number of other workshops as they fit in. And so I'll tell you which ones are full workshops that you can go and explore even more about these. So scripts, I do an entire workshop just on scripts. And so if you ever want to explore that, you can do so. The way that I think about scripts is like as you were growing up, you were basically given lines to your play, right? Or your movie, however you want to think about it. And you learn those lines extremely well. And what happens is when you're in a situation where you get triggered or you're just, it's like you know that this is where you follow one of your scripts, then it just happens. You're not aware of it, right? There, it isn't conscious, it's automatic and you're responding and it's like one of those times where you say yes when you really wanted to say no and you're just like I didn't even think about it, like the words were coming out of my mouth before I even had a chance to say anything. Why is that happening? I think of those as scripts, and we learned them so much growing up that we don't even know that they're scripts. We don't even think of them as not us, but they're not us, they're just things that we learned and we've learned to be that way, but that is not necessarily who we are. And they're unconscious, right? That's why they're automatic. You're not thinking about them. So I'm going to talk about awareness in a little bit, but awareness is really important when you're trying to think about scripts. So you may have there are you know, thousands of scripts that you could have. These are just like four examples that I wanted to share with you just to kind of get it into your head to see if it helps you understand it better. So there's the people pleaser, which is the whole idea of like, if I keep everyone happy, I'll be safe. The performer, if I'm perfect, I won't be rejected. People will love me. The caretaker, if I take care of everyone else, then I'll be okay. And then the invisible one, if I don't take up space, I won't get hurt. No one will notice me, and so I won't get hurt. So these are some examples of scripts that we've learned, and I promised I would talk about awareness, and so here we are. Awareness is probably the most important thing I talk about. Awareness is probably the most important thing I talk about, and self-compassion is probably the second most important thing that I talk about. Awareness is so important that you can't do anything you want to do with your life without having some awareness. And you certainly can't make any of the kinds of changes you want to make in yourself without first becoming aware of them, right? You can't change what you don't notice. But once you notice, you've begun taking back control and you have this ability to then change how you respond versus just reacting. So awareness helps you recognize your emotional port keys, when you've time traveled, what you need, and how you can help yourself. I want to take a moment and teach you my three-step process called the awareness arc. And it's basically really a simplified way of understanding what how to become more aware. It's obviously a bit more complicated than this, but this will give you the basic gist, and then you can start kind of practicing on your own. So it's really why, what, and now what. So why is the realization. It's a it's the awareness that begins when you notice activation, when you notice a script, when you notice yourself being triggered, when you notice the panicky feelings in your body, when you notice that maybe you're feeling like a little kid, or that you just have this flood of emotions, right? Just to be able to notice that, be aware that it's happening, because think about how many times in your life you haven't even been aware that it was happening, and be able to pause and say something like, something in me is activated. I feel activated. I need to do something for myself. The what is really when we're focusing on understanding what happened. So, first is the why. You kind of want to figure out what happened. And then the what is the understanding of it. So what did make me feel this reaction? What did actually trigger me? What meaning or story did I attach to it? Does this remind me of something similar or familiar to my past? And then the third component, once you get there, becomes the most important component. It's about intentional action and care. This is where you get to use that sense of choice, right? Where you get to say, okay, I had this reaction. I understand I was triggered. Now, what do I need? And what do I want? Meaning, if you're in a difficult situation and you've agreed to something you don't want to do, now's your chance to think about, okay, well, do I actually want to do that? And if I don't, how do I take care of myself? Is there a way to advocate for myself now? How can I be self-compassionate with myself about this moment, right? Because we don't need to use our awareness to beat ourselves up. That's not fair at all. We want to be more understanding and caring and thoughtful with ourselves, because we're at a really vulnerable place when we get triggered. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not throwing too much at you. If I am, just send me questions in the Q&A and I will be happy to address them. Again, that self-compassion piece in the now what section is really, really important. There's a lot of good research on self-compassion and how it deactivates the fight or flight process, and how it activates our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system that is the part of our nervous system that helps calm us, that does the rest and digest stuff. And again, realizing is what's important. Even if you realize it days later, it doesn't matter. It matters that you realized it. There's no need to judge ourselves for the fact that we didn't realize it in the moment or right away or whatever it is, right? This is hard work. I hope you don't think I am trying to make this seem so simple. I'm sure it maybe does with slides like this. It's like, oh, this is so easy. It's not easy work. It's doable work. You can absolutely do it, but it's hard work and it's intense. And being kind to ourselves and caring with ourselves is, right after self-awareness, the most important thing you could do for yourself. Another way I want to help you think about your nervous system is thinking of it as a speeding train. So our nervous system is like a speeding train, and there are a couple things that you really want to do. One, you want to try and manage your speed, right? You don't want your nervous system to get out of control, because once it's out of control, once it gets activated and you're in that fight or flight mode, it's hard to deactivate that. As you may well know, right? If you've ever sat down for a few moments and felt jittery or wired, or your brain is racing, or you try to go to sleep at night and your brain is just churning through stuff and you're like, I just need to sleep, and your brain keeps going. That's because your nervous system is still in that fight or flight mode and it doesn't know that it's time to calm down. So we want to manage your speed. We want to build what I call station stops, which are basically what it sounds like, ways to help slow down our nervous system during the day so that we pause. And that also helps manage our speed. And then it gets going again. And then it pauses and we stop. And then we get to it going again. And then we get to another station stop, etc. And then also think about, the kind of long braking distance that you need at night, particularly if you haven't been able to slow your nervous system during the day. So I think so many of us go to bed still in that fight or flight state. Our nervous system is still speeding along. And we go into bed, our brains are racing, our bodies are churning, they're wired, whatever it is, and we can't fall asleep, which then, of course, we feel this judgment about and feel this shame about, and then we're stressing about tomorrow. And that only keeps our nervous system activated, that fight or flight system activated. So, thinking about how do you manage your speed, how do you build station stops, and how do you allow yourself for a long braking distance in the evening or when you're thinking about weekends or vacations. So I want to talk a little bit about the autonomic nervous system. Again, I don't want this to be too technical at all, but your autonomic nervous system regulates the involuntary functions that you don't have to think about. Heartbeat, breathing, digestion, as I was saying earlier. Your sympathetic nervous system is your body's accelerator. That's the fight or flight response. That's where it comes from. The parasympathetic nervous system is your brake system. That's the rest and digest, right? That's what calms you down, slows your heart rate, conserves your energy. So all you need to know is we want to be doing more things in our lives. Excuse me, we want to be doing more things in our lives that um, deactivates our sympathetic nervous system and that fight or flight and activates or stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part that helps us slow down and calm down. We can't just tell our brains and our nervous system that's what we want. We need to do things to help that happen. So, um, sorry, Gilmarie asks, when triggered and overthinking at night or through the day, how do I come back to awareness instead of falling into the rabbit hole of thought? I'm actually, this is what I'm going to be talking about for the rest of the workshop. So that was good timing on your question because now I feel like I'm already addressing your question. And and so that's what we'll be focusing on for the rest of tonight. We'll be talking about how to anchor yourself when you get triggered. But the truth is, everything that I'm talking about in terms of anchors are really good things that you can do on a regular basis even when you're not triggered, that will help you calm down and feel more grounded. So we talked about emotional time travel and port keys, and then we talked a little bit about how the brain works, what's actually happening in our brains and our bodies. And so now we're back to okay, we have this emotional time travel experience. We understand, hopefully, a little bit better how this actually happens in our brains and the fact that it's not our fault, that this is a feature of our brain. It's not a bug, it's a feature. And so, what can we actually do when we feel triggered and or just on a regular basis to help ourselves be more grounded? So, I like the term anchors, right? You're anchoring yourself to the present. You have this anchor that when you go into the past, that pull helps pull you back or at least gives you a guide to where you want to get back to. So let's talk about anchors. We've got body anchors, which are physical practices that you can do. There's script anchors. We talked about scripts, right? These are the mental practices that you can do. And then there are emotional anchors, which are obviously things around emotions to help remind you of who you are today. So the body anchors are really about regulating your nervous system. It's about deactivating your sympathetic nervous system and activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So deactivating fight or flight and activating the rest and digest. So there are a number of breathing exercises that you can do that, in fact, we'll do one together in a moment. But there are a number of breathing exercises that you can do. And you can also exercise, you can do stretching, you can try and intentionally relax different parts of your body. We probably don't realize how tense we are on a regular basis. And so that's something that you can do. There's something called a grounding activity that's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think that is like almost too much pressure when you're uh, not feeling grounded, is to try and remember what 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 means. It means five things that you see, four things that you hear, three things that you touch, two things that you smell, and one thing you taste. Um, but the goal is really to engage your senses. And so just start by looking at things around you, right? So, um, I've got my mouse here, I've got a monitor, I've got my water bottle, you know, just noticing the things that are around you and listening to the things around you and seeing what you can feel will be huge in helping ground yourself to the present. When we engage our senses like this, it helps our brain to reorient back to the now. And so you don't have to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but engaging your sentence is really helpful. I talked about station stops during the day. Let me tell you a little bit more about those. So I think a lot about transitions that we have in life, not major life transitions, but just transitions in our everyday activities, right? So, the getting up in the morning to, you know, getting ready for work, to going to work, to logging in, to you have a meeting and then the meeting's over. And before you start your next activity, all of these in between moments, these transition moments, I think of them as potential station stops. They're ways that you can pause, practice a breathing activity, a stretching activity, engage with your senses, do some of the other anchor ideas that we're going to go over in a moment. That's kind of how you turn it into a station stop. And that's how you slow down your nervous system. And I'm not talking about doing it something for half an hour or 45 minutes. I'm talking about doing something for a minute or 2 minutes. Even 30 seconds would be good, right? If you can do it longer, great. If you just have 1 or 2 minutes, it's absolutely worth doing it for 1 or 2 minutes. So I want to teach you three different breathing exercises, and then we're going to do one together just so you get a feel for it. So there's one called the 5/7 breaths. You can also do any variation of that you want, 4, 6, 3, 5, whatever you'd like. It's you inhale for 5 seconds and then you exhale for 7 seconds. And so when our fight or flight is triggered, we tend to, like, you've heard of people hyperventilating, right? That's because we're breathing in oxygen faster because we're using it to help create energy and get us wired and ready to fight, right? When we start controlling our breathing so that we're exhaling longer than we're inhaling, we're telling our brain, oh, we're not in fight or flight mode anymore. So we can help calm down a little bit. So that's one. Box breathing is kind of what it sounds like. It's just think of it as a 4 second box. So you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. Inhale 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds. A box. The third one is counting breaths. So you don't have to count the seconds of inhaling and the seconds of exhaling. Again, if you can make it so that your exhale is longer than your inhale, that would be good. But just the process of breathing in, breathing out, one, and just counting to yourself one, and then doing that again. There's the rhythmic quality of that is meditative, right? It's calming. It keeps us focused. So if we're distracted by the chaos around us or the chaos that's in our heads, being able to count will help slow us down and get us to focus on something. So those are three options. I'm going to do option one, and we're going to just lead that. I'm going to lead that with you, and we're going to do that together. So this won't take, we'll only just do this for a few seconds, like maybe 7 or 8 breaths. So the first couple I'll count with you, and then I'll stop counting and you can do them on your own. So make sure you're comfortable. You can close your eyes or keep them open, whatever you'd like to do. And we're going to start by inhaling for 5 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale. Exhale. You can choose to inhale or exhale through your nose or your mouth. It's really your comfort level. Okay, so let's make this the last one. Inhale. Okay. How'd that feel? I know you're probably not used to doing that. So I hope that gave you like a momentary respite of the chaos in our lives. Um, Janet just asked any help with freeze mode instead of fight or flight. Um, I think it's the same thing actually. So what just because the freeze has you frozen, right? It has you kind of feeling like you're stuck. You still need to turn off the sympathetic nervous system. You still need to turn off that fight or flight. And so engaging in these kinds of activities, even though most of them are meant to slow you down and you're not necessarily looking to slow down, you are looking to turn off, deactivate the fight or flight and reactivate the rest and digest. So I hope that helps. Script anchors. So these are like, what are those kind of automatic thoughts that rise up? I'm not safe. I always mess everything up. They're going to leave me. I'm not enough. And just notice it. Don't judge it, right? This is an old line from an old script. You didn't even write this script. This was written for you. The lines were given to you when you were growing up. What you want to try and do is hear that thought, that's awareness, and then replace it with a new thought, with your own thought, right? Something that you want to say instead. Excuse me. So this is an old feeling in a new moment. I'm safe right now. This feeling will pass. I've learned and grown since then. You want to speak to yourself as the adult you are now. So one thing that I like to say is like, I'm safe. We've made it this far. We've got this. We can do this. We're going to be okay. Because as a kid, I didn't feel that way, right? But as an adult, I know it's going to be okay. I know we're getting towards 8 o'clock already, and I want to make sure I cover everything. So I'm going to go through this. But again, if you have questions, I will, I'll stay on well after 8 if you have questions. I have no qualms in doing that. I totally enjoy answering questions. So let's go over emotional anchors. So these are things like anything that you can carry with you, or like, as in carry, store in a phone or something, or carry with you that can help you feel more connected and grounded to the present moment or to something good about your life. So, playlists, I've made playlists for every single emotion I could possibly feel. So I always had an anchor playlist. And so that's something that you can use. But any kind of music that helps you feel good, that helps you feel peaceful, calm, joy, love, any positive experience, put that in a playlist, listen to that when you get triggered and see how it is. And you might find that some of them work and some of them don't, and just keep tweaking that playlist until you get it really good for you. There's certainly things like comfort media. I am reading a book right now, a series that I have read several times, but it just brings me so much pleasure to read it. And it's such a healing experience for some reason. And so, like, sometimes that's with TV shows or movies, but whatever it is, like, that's something to think about. Connections, being connected with other people, letting people know that you're going through a difficult time, or just reaching out when you're triggered just to feel like you're connected with someone else. This can be photos, screensaver, but it can be not just of family, but of places you've been or experiences you've had that were really meaningful, that feel good. Like, so for me, I took a trip out west to Moab, to Arches National Park in the spring. And I have pictures of that all over the place because that just reminds me of such a special time. I also take a lot of pictures of sunsets, which is why you see sunsets in everything I do, including what's behind me. And so I have those everywhere I can possibly look because it helps me feel a little more grounded. Even when I'm not triggered, it's just this moment of niceness. Some people will ask friends and family to write letters to them that they can kind of remember, because I know that particularly when we're triggered, it's hard to remember we have people in our lives, that we have people that really care about us. And so that's something you can do. You can also write a letter to yourself and save that so that when you're triggered, you kind of have this list of things to like remember that you've already told yourself to remember. Because in the moment, it may be hard to remember, but it's easier to remember, oh, wait, I wrote this down. Let me read that. Nature, I mean, I joke a lot about, I am self-medicating with nature these days. So I'm spending as much time in nature as I can. And it's just been incredible. If you can find nature, definitely take advantage of it. And then there are things thinking about like affirmations or mantras. And so the two that I use the most that I think might be helpful. And again, I just want to clarify, I'm These are not things that you have to do by any stretch, but I want to give you a essentially the way I think about it is that I want to give you a portfolio of options. So you have all of this to choose from, and then you can customize what works for you. It doesn't have to be what I say, but maybe what I say gives you an idea of something that would work for you. And that's the goal here. So the affirmations that I use is may I remember I am safe so I feel safe. And also a literally grounding sentence of it is November 2025 and I'm 54 years old. Because when you're triggered, you there's no sense of time. You don't realize what year it is, and you certainly don't remember how old you are. So being able to have that reminder, and I actually put this, um, I schedule things like this as calendar appointments in my phone, so it pops up on my phone throughout the day, and that just I use that to help me remember. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry, it just stopped working for a moment. Okay. So one of the things that the affirmations can do and the letter to yourself can do is help you talk to different parts. So this is like another angle. And again, this is I have an entire workshop just on internal family systems and how to use it to help yourself. So this is just a very quick intro. But the idea behind internal family systems is that a person is made up of different parts. And those parts developed out of trauma experiences. So they're stuck in time. Whenever the whenever the trauma T that you experienced, there are these parts that developed in order to protect you. So some parts are protective, shielding us from pain. Others might carry burdens of shame, fear, or anger. The goal isn't to get rid of the parts, it's to build a relationship with the parts and develop a sense of harmony with the parts inside you. And so, one of the things that you can do when you are feeling triggered or after you feel triggered is what part of me is activated right now and actually try and have a conversation with that part. So for me, when I get triggered, I often go back to being in elementary school. Usually I feel like I'm 9 years old. What part of me is activated right now? This 9 year old. What am I afraid of? Uh, Pretty much everything, like in the entire universe. What do I need is I need to feel safe, right? This 9 year old part needs to feel safe. How old do you feel? I feel like 9. And then the main thing that I will do is offer reassurance, right? So, hey, look, it is November 2025. We're not 9 years old. Excuse me, we're not 9 years old anymore. We're actually 54 years old. We've been through a lot together, and I've really handled a lot of it. And it's my job to take care of you now. You don't have to worry about this anymore. Anything that we have to deal with, I'm going to take care of. And that's adult me talking to this 9 year old part. And it's not going to work like the first time, but it's that repetition of the reminders and letting them know that they're safe and that you're safe. That's what helps train our brains to start really believing that. I suggest anchoring with self-compassion. So I think you understand what this, I think you understand this idea, but just real quick, self-kindness is essentially the idea of treating yourself the way that you would treat someone you love, right? So what really turned self-compassion for me is as I mentioned, I have children. They're 22, so they're, quasi adults. And but really thinking about like if they came to me with the same problem that I'm having, how would I talk to them? And I would never talk to them the way that I've talked to myself in the past. I would never do that. And so kind of setting that as the bar really helped me to see, oh, I can be much more compassionate with myself and much kinder with myself. And I obviously have the skill to do that. So that's that's where the self-kindness part comes in. The common humanity idea of self-compassion is the concept that we all struggle, right? We're all together in this call because we've all experienced crap in our lives and we haven't always successfully dealt with it. And so we're here coming together to figure it out, right? That's the common humanity part, right? Just because I'm struggling doesn't mean there's something wrong with me or that I'm alone in the world. I'm struggling just like other people have struggled, do struggle, and will struggle. So I'm not alone. And it's not a sign that something's wrong with me. That's the common humanity element. The mindful awareness is being connected to what we're feeling and being aware of how we speak to ourselves. But a really important part here is being aware of what we're feeling and allowing ourselves to feel it, which is different than hearing the thoughts in our head and believing those thoughts. Next week, I'm actually going to be addressing the whole thought, the whole cognitive part. I'm doing Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. But so I'll be dealing with that next week. But what you really want to focus on is being connected to your emotions and allowing yourself to experience those emotions because then emotions come and go, right? They don't stay forever. It's the when we fight them off that they stick around for a long time. But when we allow ourselves to feel them, they pass. That's what emotions do. So mindful awareness is kind of being aware of that, being aware of the thoughts that we have, responding to them with kindness instead of criticism, and not suppressing or magnifying any pain or suffering we may have. So those are some really good ideas for anchoring, but the reality is you know what? Some days are really tough. And so all of that, none of that might work, right? Nothing you try might be able to work for you. And so what I'm gonna go through again really quickly. I do an entire workshop on self-compassion. I also have an entire workshop on self-care. And I'm going to just go through a little bit here. So there's 6 dimensions to self-care. There's physical, cognitive, emotional, relational, environmental, and protective. So again, I'm going to share this slide deck with you tomorrow so you can see some of those details. I'll give you some links to, like, I have a free self-care guide that you're welcome to download. So I'll share more of that with you tomorrow. So we don't have to spend that much time on this right now. There's one more anchoring tip I want to use, and I'm just laughing at my photo of my socks. Um, I don't have a good name for this yet, unfortunately. So I'm not sure quite how to explain it best, but I think that we need to be infusing our days with as much joy and meaning as we possibly can. And for me, one of the ways that I do that, I always wear cool socks. I'm not saying I'm cool, but the socks are cool and I wear cool socks. And when I look at them in a meeting or when I put them on or I just look at my feet, I feel like a little bit better every time. It brings me a little spark of joy. And what I'm saying to you is try and find those things. Maybe it's not socks, right? Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's jewelry or bracelet or the way you do your hair or whatever it is. I also think a lot about like the kinds of sweatshirts and like I have a lot of sweatshirts of places that I've been. So I have a sweatshirt from Arches. I have a sweatshirt from Acadia in Maine that was just absolutely beautiful experience. I do I'm from Philly and so I love all the Philly sports teams. So I have sweatshirts of theirs, like of their stuff, and all of that kind of brings me a little joy. Another thing to think about is just getting little mementos of things of when you have a good experience of whether it's on a vacation or a museum or whatever it is, so that you can look at it. And maybe that's a keychain, maybe it's a button that you put on your jacket or your backpack or something, whatever it is, right? Something that when you look at, it's just like this little moment of like, oh yeah, that was really nice. Or, oh yeah, I love that experience. That felt really good. Like it's just infusing a little bit of joy and meaning to more of your day. And I think that has real value to it. That's not necessarily something you would do precisely when you're triggered, but it can help bring you back enough to then be able to do some of these other things. Returning to the present, each time you notice yourself time traveling and consciously choose to come back to the present, you're building your own sense of self safety and you're showing your brain and your body, we made it, we survived, we're okay now. The brain has an incredible neuroplasticity capability, meaning that no matter how old you are, your brain can still change. So, what you're teaching it is you're creating new neural pathways in your brain to behave instead of the ways that you have. Now, think of it as like the way that you would create a road, right? At first, maybe it's just like a dirt road and it's not as easy to drive on. And then, but you drive on it enough that it starts to get really patted down, right? Becomes hard and it becomes a little bit easier to drive on. And then at some point, you've been doing it so well, you pave over it and it's really easy to drive on, right? In the beginning, creating that new neural pathway is challenging. I hope you didn't hear that. I'm sorry. Um, I apologize. There's someone at my door. I can't believe this is happening. So what what I'm trying to say is you're creating these new neural pathways. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to see if this person is coming to my door or not. No. So we're creating these new neural pathways. And in the beginning, it's really challenging and difficult. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And that's really what I want you to remember. Be patient with yourself, be compassionate with yourself. This is brave, courageous work that you're doing. So I told you earlier about this return map. So it's kind of just like a worksheet that you can use. So on it, it has what are your most common port keys. It has what anchors help you return to now, and it has what other self-care activities you can turn to. So you tomorrow, if you want, if you didn't do it while we were doing this together, which is totally fine if you didn't, of course, tomorrow, when I send around the slide deck, I'll also send you the link to the worksheet again in case you didn't get it tonight. And I'll send around the recording. You can actually fill that out if you want in order to better understand and build your awareness of what are your emotional port keys, what are the kinds of situations that do trigger you, and then what anchors help you return to now, and other things that you can do to help yourself and care for yourself. I've touched on it a little bit, but I suggest having a daily anchor practice, right? I don't want you to save your anchors just for when you're triggered because the more grounded you feel on a regular basis, the less tumultuous, let's say, the trigger experience is. So you can do some morning grounding. You can do midday station stops again, like turning those transitions in your day into real pauses where you take a break, even for a minute or two. Track the triggers that you experience so you can learn and you can use the return to map for a lot of this, the return to map worksheet. But keep learning where and what types of situations you get triggered and why it happens. Um, and then you can start thinking about how to prepare for those situations so that you feel more grounded when you go in and you have a plan for when you get out of that situation if you're not, if you've been triggered. And then evening reflection, just sort of taking a look at what's been going on. But again, this is to focus on what you've done well. This is not an opportunity to be self-critical and judge yourself for what you may have done wrong, right? You want to just be able to use this time to be like, oh, I used this anchor tool today, or I set up this reminder in my phone today, and I really enjoyed being able to see that, or whatever it is, right? So that's your daily anchor practice. We're just about at the end. Your new mantra, I want you to just think about, and this again doesn't have to be yours, right? I think this is a good start for you, but you can rewrite it however you want. That was then, I am here now. Just remembering something like that that you can just say over and over again. You can write down somewhere, you can put it in your phone as a reminder. You can say it to yourself when you're feeling triggered or entering a triggering situation. That was then, I am here now. Another way of thinking about this is if your younger self could hear one thing from you right now, what would you want them to know? And so, like, for me, if I was to say something to my 9-year-old self, I part of what I do say is, dude, you did such an amazing job. I wouldn't have made it if you hadn't done what you had done. And now you can retire. I got you. I will keep us safe. You don't have to worry about that anymore. And like, and I've done this so many times, I feel emotional because that is what my 9-year-old self wished anyone would have said, you know? I'm sure you understand that. Last reminder, there's nothing wrong with you, right? This isn't this the tr responding to triggers, having triggers, that's not a failure on your part. Does not mean that there's something broken inside you. You are fine. You are dealing with something that is extremely difficult. And I hope tonight can help you at least get started on how you might be able to handle that. But you survived something difficult and you were resourceful enough to create strategies that helped you get through it. That's incredible. It's incredible. You did it as a child when you didn't even have the capacity to really think yet, right? Somehow your brain and body figured this out. It's amazing. And you were successful because you're here. Be kind and compassionate to yourself. You're healing, you're growing, you're doing really hard work. Awareness is the key. It brings choice, choice brings freedom, and freedom brings healing. Okay, thank you very much. Wow, I'm really over. I apologize. I may have tried to include too much in this workshop. I was really excited about this one. So let me go through a couple things real quick, and then I'll see if there are any questions left. So, one, let me tell you about the workshops. I've got a good stretch of workshops here that I'm really excited about. Next week, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Stoicism meets CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I will really be talking about this similar kind of stuff, but about thoughts. And I'm going to talk about this new metaphor that I've come up with called the mental marketplace and how you can really learn to understand that thoughts are not facts. They are not real. They are not truth. I'm really excited about that because this is kind of like one of those things that I get real jazzed about. The week after that, I'm doing interactive journaling with AI, tools for self-awareness and growth. All of these workshops are free, by the way. So feel free to register. If you can't make it, I'll be sending around the recording and the slide deck the next day. Healing from trauma by working with your parts, an intro to internal family systems. And then the last one before the holidays, handle your feelings during the holidays, tools for emotional management. So this will be a little similar to this, but it will focus a lot less on triggers and more on about how to manage and deal with your own emotions. The three self-care guides that I mentioned that are free, uh, self-care guide, this three starter guides, self-care guide for people who don't know where or why to start, rewriting inner scripts, a starter guide to self-awareness, and a no pressure guide to getting started with mindfulness meditation. So again, you can get them so my website is Build on Your Strengths, so buildonyourstrengths.com/free guides or scan the QR code. But again, I'll send this all around tomorrow. Excuse me. I offer a free clarity call. It's a 30-minute, like it's like a mini session where if you want to find out what it's like to work with me, you can we can talk. You can ask me any questions you want, or you can just bring up a topic and we'll talk about it. And if you want to continue, we can continue. And if you don't, that's totally fine. I actually won't let you schedule with me in the clarity call because I like to give people a chance to think about it. And so I'll send you an email afterwards and you can decide what you want to do from that point. If you'd like to work with me, awesome. And if you don't, that's okay too. You can keep coming to workshops. I've created a way to get some deeper content. And so a lot of my workshops have been recorded. So you can go to my store. It's called Strength Studios, and you can check them out. It's a small fee, usually around like $10 or something for recorded workshops. But you can see here the internal family system, the scripts, the self-compassion, the sleep. All of those are recorded in the store. I've also created some specialty bundles and some specialty workbooks. The self-care again, I'll send this link around tomorrow, but I think you might be interested in the Everything You Need to Know About Self-Care collection. Oh, sorry. One thing I forgot to mention that is important. I'm offering a 25% discount code for my store tomorrow or for as long as you want. So just use the term self-care with a hyphen in it. Again, I'll send this tomorrow. Um, Everything You Need to Know About Self-Care collection. It has some video. It has a workshop. It has a workbook. It has some short reads, and it has a guide. And so it's a lot of information all about self-care and walking you through how to build your own self-care practice. I do offer individual coaching. Here's some of the information on that. There's individual coaching. There's if you buy 6 sessions, it knocks the price down to 125 instead of 150. There are more intensive sessions. And if you're interested in those or any of that, just reach out to me. My email is jeremy@buildonyourstrengths.com. And then if you think your organization might be interested in doing workshops like this, I'm happy to come in and talk to someone there. And I can do workshops for organizations as well. Also allow free membership to my store where they can have access to previous workshops and the other content that I've written. Okay, so that's everything. You'll see all this tomorrow. I think there's a few questions here. So, can you talk about awareness in an energetic sense? I can transport back to a lived experience of my mother's mood states, mostly around dealing with stress, like dealing with my brother's tantrums or father's outbursts. I can re-experience my mom either agitated or chaotic, sensing her quick chaotic movement. Other times So there's something called dissociation. And when we have experiences that are too intensely emotional, our bodies disconnect, our brains disconnect from that experience. And so it sounds to some extent like what you're talking about is a bit of a dissociation. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Our brains tend to allow us to feel more the more comfortable and safer that we feel. So, Valerie, I would suggest, at least in the beginning, really focusing on the helping to understand you're safe, helping to ground yourself in the present, and really focusing on those things right now. And, if you have emotions that come up, allowing yourself to feel those emotions and letting them kind of wash through you, but I wouldn't worry too much about how to be more connected to your emotions in the past. That will come pretty naturally as you feel safer in your present. So Caesar asks, do I use NLP or CBT techniques? I totally use CBT techniques. I use a lot of um, IFS work as well, if that's work. Like some people are not comfortable with that, so I don't use it with them. But so yeah, there's a lot of different approaches. I'm not really wedded to one approach. I really like fitting what works for that individual. Do you find that patients that have faith because they are active with their churches are easier to work with or overcome any family situations and or negative mental situations? That is a fascinating question, Cesar. I haven't really worked with many people who have told me that they are very strong in their faith. Um, I think it's a tricky challenge there. I think sometimes, yes, for people that feel very strong in their faith, that can be a source of strength for them. I think if whatever traumas they experienced are connected to their religion or to the people that instilled that faith in them, then it becomes much more complicated and difficult to deal with. So I hope that helped. And I certainly have no problems working with people who are faith-based. So someone asked, how do you get away from your triggers? And I mean, I think my idea is that you can't get away from your triggers. You can be more aware of what situations are likely to trigger you and then be better prepared for those situations. And I think that's something to really think about. Um, and so I think it's really the key again is being aware of what triggers you and of when you get triggered, and then what you do to take care of yourself once you realize it. So this another person mentioned, thank you for this presentation. You're very welcome. Thank you. I feel that my nervous system has been in fight or flight mode for a long time due to chronic stress. I would say that you're probably right. Could you give some advice on how to regulate and how to get a good night's sleep? I haven't been able to sleep well for a long time. Every time I start to over and begin something new, stress takes over. So, I, I mean, this is a very common, challenging experience, and like stress is brutal on our bodies and our minds. It's really tough to deal with. What I would suggest is really look at self-care activities, really think about your nervous system is a speeding train. What can you do to slow down that train? And think about that not from this would be nice to do, or maybe I do this a few times a week, but how many times a day can I start to slow down my nervous system so that I can start to feel more calm? It's not going to happen like that, but I would really focus on self-care and I would really focus on station stops. thinking of your system your nervous system as a speeding train. And what do you do to manage the speed? What do you do to create station stops during your day? And how much time do you need at night to give yourself for wind down, for braking distance? I hope that helps. So I think that's all the questions. I know we've went pretty over tonight, so I appreciate your patience. Um, if you have other questions, feel free to reach out to me. And again, I will send you everything tomorrow morning. If you don't have it by noon, just reach out to me on Meetup or email me or whatever, and I'll let you know because sometimes I'll send it out through Meetup, but I don't, it's weird. Not everybody gets it, and I don't know. So don't worry. If you don't get it by noon, just reach out to me and I'll send it to you. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate you joining me tonight. And I will hopefully see you all next week. Okay.